Literature has this fascinating way of hiding its greatest talents. For every Hemingway we celebrate, there are three equally brilliant writers whose stories were nearly lost to time.
That's exactly what makes this story of three forgotten authors so compelling. How did an English poet, an Irish journalist, and a German novelist create this incredible literary circle that's only now getting recognition?
You know what's fascinating about Henry Young? Here's this working class guy from Yorkshire who lost his father in a mining accident, fought in World War I, and somehow managed to write some of the most influential poetry of his generation while working as a pub bouncer.
Well, that's where he met Miller Harris in 1922, right? One of those chance encounters that completely changes the course of literary history.
Speaking of Miller, here's an orphan who learned to survive on London streets thanks to this remarkable prostitute named Alice McCarthy. She believed in him so much that she would steal books to feed his love of reading.
That detail about Alice really gets me, how Miller later wrote this newspaper column searching for her, only to discover she had died just days before he returned from the war.
And then we have Zelmer Hoffman, who came from a supposedly respectable Berlin family, but, oh man, had an incredibly difficult childhood. His only real support came from his Aunt Marlene, who encouraged his reading before dying of tuberculosis.
The way these three found each other and created this support system is just remarkable. They were all shaped by World War I, all outsiders in their own way.
What really stands out about their relationships? How incredibly ahead of their time they were. I mean, Henry's bisexuality, which he could only share with Josephine Carter, and these overlapping relationships they all had with women like Bella Cuevas and Renee Lambert.
That brings up something interesting. Their time in Paris seems to have been a golden period for all of them, especially Henry. He wrote his best poetry there, right?
Exactly. And Zelmer produced 7 novels during those 6 years that are now considered masterpieces. But then World War II shattered everything they'd built.
That's what makes their story so heartbreaking. Henry dying just days after his son was born, Miller retreating to Alabama, and never writing again.
What's fascinating about Miller's later life? He became a small-town high school English teacher in Alabama, completely removed from his wild days in Berlin and Paris. Never spoke about those years again.
So what do you make of how their legacies have evolved over time? They were essentially unknown in their era, but had a brief moment in the spotlight in the 1960s.
It's interesting that you mention that because their rediscovery gained momentum when Hans Fallada was rediscovered in 2009. That sparked a renewed interest in German literature from the Weimar period, leading people back to Zelmer's work.
And now their descendants are carrying on the literary tradition in their own way.
That's right. Henry's son became a best-selling novelist, and Zelmer's grandson, Miller Hoffman, is also writing now. But you know what really strikes me about their story? How it challenges this myth of the solitary genius writer.
They showed how great art often comes from connection rather than isolation.
And maybe that's their most important legacy, showing how friendship, love, and creativity can help us navigate even the darkest times. These 3 men wrote what they lived, loved fiercely, and left behind something that still speaks to us today.
Like a reminder that sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about the famous names we all know, but about the quiet revolutionaries who changed literature without anyone noticing.
And now, nearly a century later, we're finally giving them the recognition they deserve. Their story shows us that great art isn't always recognized in its own time, but the truth of it, the humanity of it, eventually finds its way to the surface.